Hi, my name is Anneli Portman, and in this lesson on Finnish political culture and system, we will look at the welfare state. Disraeli once said, "The only duty of power, the social welfare of the people." And this was in 1845. So the idea of a welfare state is not a new one. But what does it actually mean? The core idea of the welfare state is that the state plays a key role in the economic and social well-being of the citizens. And this is then based on the equality of opportunity, equitable distribution of wealth, and public responsibility for the needy. And during this lesson, we will look more closely at what these concepts mean. Beveridge Report in the middle of the war, so about 100 years after Disraeli, in the middle of the Second World War, the Lord Beveridge was asked to give a report on what the state of the nation is and what is needed. And he said that there are 5 giants the government needs to fight. And his words were applicable not only to the United Kingdom, but also to other places such as the Nordic countries. The 5 giants, he pointed out, were want, disease, ignorance, squalor, and idleness. And he came up with the idea that everybody who works needs to contribute to a pool of money so that those who cannot work and cannot support themselves can still have a life of dignity and will not fall below a certain line. Where do these giants come from? Well, all of us, everybody needs income. Everybody needs some sort of health care. Everybody needs education, housing, and employment. And the giants were the ones fighting these very basic need of all citizens. There are different types of welfare states, so there are different types in how these questions are answered and who should provide them and how they are done. Esping Andersen, in a seminal book of 1989, classified the most developed welfare states in the following way: the social democratic ones, conservative, and liberal. The social democratic welfare state is the one where the state is responsible and the emphasis on redistribution of wealth. This can be seen in the Nordic countries and in the Netherlands. The conservative or the Christian democratic model centers around the idea that the family is responsible for the well-being of individuals. Something that can be seen in Spain or Italy or Belgium or Austria. And the emphasis of the services is that they center around the family. The liberal, or the Anglo-Saxon model, sees the individual as pivotal. So the individual is responsible for his or her well-being, money, provision, housing, etc. And especially the emphasis, therefore, is on the individual work. That then enhances the role of charities and private initiatives to provide for in situations where working is not possible. The Nordic model, then, following the social democratic model, has as its core concepts macro-collectivism, solidarity, and universalism. Macro-collectivism means that the givers and the receivers of the distributed wealth have no personal relationship with one another. So you will not know, or I will not know, whose money it is that I receive as housing benefits, for instance, or who has paid for the schooling of my child. But it comes from a common pool. Solidarity means that there is a joint responsibility for the well-being of all, based on the equality of all and the intrinsic value of each person, regardless of how rich, how poor, how sick, how healthy they are, or what their gender is. The principle of universalism means that there is a low degree of selectivity and there's a high coverage of social protection. So there are things everybody is entitled to, and they are universal, publicly provided services such as the education, instead of them being targeted at just the few. The more features of the Nordic model are that it's something which is like a hybrid between capitalism and socialism. There are egalitarian and extensive benefits based on citizenship or residency, for instance, education, child support. There is gender equality. Women and men are equal and are treated as such. And then there is the labor force participating in negotiations of how the whole work area and salaries should be done. So it's a tripartite negotiation system where the labor force, together with the state and together with the employers, actually talk about things together. And that also means that the position of unions, trade unions, is strengthened. Wealth redistribution is done through state support. So it doesn't come from private initiatives, but it is the state who supports this and who takes care of it. Also, the Nordic model sees that the government is in control in spending and taxes, and the government also tries to stabilize business cycles so that they wouldn't affect people so much. And also, it's the government who reduces in unemployment and is actively promoting economic growth. How does this work? What makes this money go around? Here you can see a chart. So, the citizens pay taxes, which the state collects. What does the state then do with all this collected money? Well, part of them go to public services, to which everybody is entitled to, such as pension, healthcare, housing, childcare, education. So all of this is paid by tax money. But then there are also individually given benefits to those who are in dire need of them. So, for instance, for housing, there might be housing support, or if you totally fall away from workforces, you are entitled to a minimum amount of money with which you will survive, so that you will not suffer hunger. How is all this funded? Well, the tax burden is quite high, and it works with the principle, the more you earn, the more you pay. So that is called progressive tax. And this welfare system in Finland and Nordic countries is funded through a mixed economy idea. So that there's a redistributionist taxation, and then there's also free economy. So the state is kind of doing a balancing act between having free economy and, on the other hand, controlling what happens. Overall, tax burdens in welfare countries are quite high. So, for instance, in Finland, as a percentage of the GDP, it is around 48.5%. And public spending is also quite high, which in Finland is a little bit less than half. So a little bit less than all the money that the state collects actually goes to public spending. What are the impacts the welfare state has? First of all, gender equality. Nordic women have a higher level of equality with men than most other European countries. It can be seen in the educational level, economic activity, political and cultural participation. For instance, now in the current parliament, 41.5% of the members of parliament are women. And it also means points towards a quite high level of female employment, which is explicable by generous maternity benefits and the organization by the state of daycare facilities. Here you can see a global map of gender gap index. So how different men and women are, or how different their fate is or their status is. And while not being the absolute best of place, which here would go to Iceland, Finland still scores quite high, meaning the gender gap is very small. Education. One impact of welfare state is that the rights of citizens include constitutional rights to free basic education. In Finland, this right has been extended to all immigrants whose children are between 6 and 17 who are permanently resident in Finland. They have also the right to receive the same basic education as Finnish citizens. Educational also then means that in terms of immigrant policy, immigrants of all ages are provided with instruction in either Finnish or Swedish language once they are permanently residing in Finland. And the objective is a functional bilingualism so that An immigrant is in command of either Finnish or Swedish while maintaining his or her native language. The education has been the bedrock of Finnish society, but under the current circumstances, education and how free it is a matter that is under change. Poverty. The Nordic model has been quite successful in reducing poverty. Taxation has meant that there haven't been really poor or really rich because taxation functions as an equalizer. Also in the Nordic countries, there is the lowest rates of child poverty in the EU. But however, relative poverty is increasing. By relative poverty is meant that the incomes of some people are below 60% of the current median income. That does not mean that there would necessarily be absolute poverty in the Nordic countries. But in terms of relative poverty, we can see that the trend has been increasing one, especially in Finland. So in the mid-80s, it was around 10% and is currently around 15%. And this is after taxes. Income distribution in Finland is done through the Social Insurance Institution of Finland. In Finnish, it's called Kela. And here you can see their webpage, and through them, they provide most of the distribution, most of the benefits, both for families, students, unemployed, or if you're in ill health. And in the families, you also have the famous maternity package, which has been making international headlines. Economy. The impact of welfare state of the economy is that it usually favors economic growth, income distribution, and therefore well-being. An active government is part of this, making it succeed, making it happen, as it redistributes income and also affects economic policy. But all of this, of course, is based on a well-functioning market economy. That is where the current difficulties with the current economic situations come into play, because a welfare state will not be possible to maintain if there is not a pool big enough of tax money that can then be redistributed. Now it is, again, your time to think. How are education and healthcare paid for in your country? Does the state control economy? So the welfare state too is part and parcel of what makes Finland tick.